Jungling can be a complex role. You gotta learn about ganking, clearing camps efficiently, and making your mark on the game early and often. But there's also a variety of very complex and difficult champions in this role too, some more than others. So today we're taking a look at the top 10 hardest junglers to master in Season 13. Starting off in number 10, we have Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix was one of the original 200 years champions. He has tons of different parts to his kit, and if you can use them all correctly, you're gonna have a blast. Now anyone can get a few kills in the early game and get fed on this champion. Sometimes that's all it takes, you snowball really quickly and you look like a bit of a demon. But actually there is a lot that separates the good Kha'Zix from the master Kha'Zix player. The basics are fairly simple. You have high damage in your Q, especially when you're isolated. You have a poke and heal in your W. You have a gap closer in your E that gets reset, and you also have that stealth element in your ultimate. But actually what makes Kha'Zix more difficult is actually knowing how to combo your abilities together, which ones to evolve properly, and how to weave an animation cancel your abilities so you can come out on top every single time. You're going to need to know which abilities to evolve first depending on the draft. Sometimes you'll need that extra bit of stealth. Sometimes you want those leap resets against highly mobile teams. Sometimes you want the extra width and poke from your W, and sometimes you just want more damage on your Q. This is one of the overriding things that you'll need to know how to do and when to do it on Kha'Zix every single game. One of the other biggest parts about mastering Kha'Zix though is limit testing. Knowing exactly how much damage you have when you're isolated, knowing how to sustain off with your W to survive, knowing how to juke and kite and stealth, and then you've also got those other little important mechanics like those jump resets, using double jumps, using your Q at the same time as your E, and everything else that comes along with it. And if all of that wasn't enough, one of the biggest things about mastering any jungler, and especially so with Kha'Zix, is learning your matchups. Now despite Kha'Zix being a high damage threat and a snowballing machine, he's also exceptionally vulnerable to invades. And one of the main reasons for this is that if Kha'Zix isn't isolated, if he's fighting a jungle camp when someone invades him, he doesn't really deal any damage. So you're going to need to know against every single jungle which ones are going to invade you, which ones you can invade, which ones you can duel in the river, and so on and so forth. And once you've learned all of these things we've just mentioned, then you can call yourself a Kha'Zix master. Coming in the number 9 spot, we've got Kayn. Now Kayn is another jungler with a fairly simple kit, but actually he has so much more to think about. From collecting those orbs and gaining those forms to perfecting every single item build that you have to offer. You need to know how to navigate the jungle quickly with your E, traversing walls to get to camps quicker. You need to know how to Q against walls to maximize your DPS too, and you need to know when and how you can function pre-form and after your form as well, depending on which one to go for. And when playing Kayn, you need to learn both forms, which is basically like learning 2 separate champions. The Bruiser Red Kayn is all about disrupting fights, sustaining, healing, CCing everybody, and being an absolute nightmare to deal with. And then Blue Kayn is the true slippery mobile assassin, floating around the map, zooming through walls and one-shotting squishies. And there's various combos and mechanics that you need to know how to pull off in both of these forms as well. From item builds to different forms to animation cancelling to comboing to clearing the camps more efficiently to getting around the map and making your mark without losing tempo, this is all part of playing Kayn. And of course you need to learn your matchups and limits as well. If you do need help with any builds, runes for either of Kayn's 2 forms, then make sure you check out Mobalytics, because we've got everything you need to know all updated every single day from the pros, the high elo players and the Kayn masters. So make sure you download that and bring it with you into your next game. In the number 8 spot, we've got Viego, who probably has one of the most simple kits out of anyone in this video. He's got damage in his Q, he's got stealth and movement speed in his E, he's got a W little dash stun, and of course he's got his executing ultimate. But actually what makes Viego hard to master is you're basically mastering every other champion in the game. Yes, you're going to need to have a serious amount of game knowledge and experience in League of Legends in general to actually pull off Viego consistently. Understanding every champion in the game's basic ability rotation, combos and mechanics is one thing. But then you also need to know how to combo those abilities from other champions with your own abilities kit, plus your ultimate, plus those resets and everything else along that goes with it. And then you've also got to think which champion is actually worth possessing, because if you pick up the AD carry with no items, you're not going to be that useful. If you pick up the Fed Darius, you're probably going to 1v9. Mastering Viego is also about mastering that dynamic playstyle, knowing when and which champions to pick up, knowing how to use your abilities to get those resets in the first place, because if you don't get a single ultimate reset, you're probably not going to do anything in the fight. You're going to get blown up and you're going to get sent back to the shopkeeper. Viego can be a lot of fun and extremely rewarding to play perfectly, but you will need some seriously high game knowledge to pull him off consistently. So maybe it's time to spam those ARAMs. At number 7, it's Graves. Graves is one of the most rewarding junglers in the game if you can play him perfectly. It starts off with navigating the jungle and killing and kiting those camps efficiently. On Graves in the jungle, you can amass a serious amount of golden experience, and you're going to need to know how to do this on a regular basis whilst having impact on the map, whilst counter jungling, whilst invading, whilst dueling the enemy jungler, and keeping constant tempo and impact. Then you've actually got to know how to fight properly on Graves as well, because if you're fighting through minion waves, you're not actually going to be able to hit any of your enemies, so you need to pick your fights perfectly. You need to catch enemies off guard, you need to execute them with your ultimate, you need to time those smoke screens perfect to shut away their escape, and also utilize your E's auto attack reset optimally too to make sure you're maximizing your damage. High Elo Graves one trick is one of the scariest things to play against. They get 300 CS to get 6 items before you get your third, and they walk around the map one-shotting everyone, becoming unkillable because of that tanky armor passive, and it just makes this champion so hard to shut down. Speaking of high elo players, coming in at number 6, we've got Kindred. On first impressions, Kindred doesn't really look that difficult, but it's that scaling, passive, counter-jungling minigame that makes her so scary in the right hands. Yes, constantly invading, securing those marks, and scaling up your passive is what makes Kindred players really pop. So for the average Kindred player who's sitting there and farming their own jungle, not collecting any marks, they're not really going to do anything. But the high elo Kindred masters will be in your jungle, be taking all your camps, taking every scuttle crab, tearing through objectives, and dueling you with every chance they get. When learning Kindred, you also need to learn how to attack move perfectly, how to cut with your Q, and you also need to be careful of your positioning too, because at the end of the day, you're a marksman in the jungle. You're extremely fragile, and against all those assassins and bruisers that can dive on top of you, you need to know what you're doing. Then of course you've got Kindred's ultimate too, which allows her to secure objectives, which allows her to keep her whole team alive in teamfights. It makes her amazing in duels, and understanding the versatility of this ultimate is what really separates those Kindred masters from the rest. Next up, in the number 5 spot, we've got Taliyah. Now Taliyah goes through waves of being viable, being super OP, and not really being played that much. But despite all of this, it doesn't change just how hard Taliyah is to master in the jungle, and how insanely OP she can be in the right hands. The first thing you need to realize is just how vulnerable Taliyah actually is. If you miss one of your abilities, you're going to get jumped on and blown up in seconds. So this alone makes Taliyah hard to play. But then you've actually got to work out all of your burst damage limits, how much damage you actually deal in rotation so you can take on fights or avoid them, and then you need to know your combos as well. If you line up a big WE or EW combo, you can blow up and CC an entire team at once. You can time this around allied CC to maximize your consistency, because if your enemies dodge it or flash it or avoid it, they're going to get on top of you and kill you super quickly. Then you've also got Taliyah's jungle clearing. It's really not that simple. You need to know how to kite the camps properly and take them down quickly at the same time. You can traverse the map quickly with your passive near walls to get to lanes quicker and gank earlier and often. And then once you get your ultimate at level 6, you've got to learn how to use this properly as well, which is really not that easy. You can cut off teams, you can jump over walls, you can get to fights from across the map. There's so much you can do with this ability, and this champion wants you perfect them. But trust me when I say that there is not many more champions in the game quite as punishing, because every time you miss your combo, you're probably going to die. Moving on to our jungler number 4, which is Shaco. Now before you ever think of playing Shaco, you need to get into a custom game and watch some videos about how to actually clear the jungle with those boxes. This is the most fundamental part of playing him, and if you don't know how to do this, you just shouldn't be locking him in the first place. Then you need to know all about Shaco's early aggression. If you're just doing a full clear, you're probably not playing him right, because you need to get into lanes with that deceive, get behind your enemies with your boxes, get into enemy jungles and invade them and take them down, and basically you're going to need to tilt your enemies off the face of the earth. Shaco's Q and E are pretty simple, but it's those boxes and the ultimates and the confusion and jukes and everything else that goes along with it, which is what makes Shaco so incredibly rewarding when he's mastered. If you've ever watched a high elo Shaco one trick online, then you'll know just what this champion is capable of. From timing your ultimate perfectly to dodge incoming abilities, to placing boxes in perfect places to catch enemies on rotations, to baiting enemies into attacking your clone and then taking them down afterwards. There is just so much that this champion can do when he's played perfectly. We are nearly there now guys, and at number 3 we've got Rengar. Rengar has always had that one trick pony reputation. He is not an easy jungler to play consistently well on, and his kit offers so much versatility that you need to know every inch of it to play him well enough. Rengar has that mobility with his passive out of brushes, he's got crazy burst damage in his Q, he's got survivability and anti-CC in his W, he's got CC of his own in his E, and then of course he's got that ultimate to assassinate and isolate enemy targets and take them out of the game. But combining all of these abilities together, knowing the perfect times to use them, is what makes Rengar so difficult. And then you've also got to know how to actually be impactful on Rengar, because if your enemies group up and you're just pressing your ultimate and running into 5 people, you're just going to die each and every time. You need to set up fights in advance in the jungle around brushes, you need to know how to clear perfectly so you don't miss out on any tempo, and you need to know how to actually use your lead when you get one. Just because you got 3 items on Rengar doesn't mean you're actually going to do anything if you're just jumping in and dying. Rengar also has a ton of builds to go for, from the full glass cannon assassin to the bruiser to the full tank. And mastering Rengar also means that you're going to need to know which build to go for in which different game. Rengar is definitely one of the most satisfying junglers to play well on though, and if you do manage to get into a brush with 2 control wards in it, that makes everything worth it. In the number 2 spot we've got Lee Sin. one of the flashiest, most enjoyable junglers in the game to play and to watch. And if you are a jungle main and you're not playing Lee Sin, then you're seriously missing out. Now first things first, it's all about Lee Sin's early aggression, those early ganks, those early skirmishes, and making your mark on the map. Limit testing, damage testing, going in and out of fights, and understanding your mobility and knowing actually how to ward hop, by the way, is a really important thing first. But then after that, you've got endless amounts of combos that you can use to outplay your enemies. From insect combos to ward hops to flash kicks and everything else along that goes with it. Mastering Lee Sin is all about perfecting those combos on a regular basis and being dynamic and unpredictable every single time. Jumping in and out of fights, jumping into teams and kicking back their AD carry, there's so much this champion offers. But if you aren't capable of doing these combos, you're literally making Lee Sin look average. Spend some time in practice mode, spend some time getting those combos right, learn your builds, learn your limits, and you'll have a lot of fun on Lee Sin if you can perfect it. Finally, I'm sure you guys already know who's coming in at number 1. Yes, it's Nidalee. There is nothing more humbling than playing against a good Nidalee player. There is a huge divide in high elo and low elo with this champion because she's really not that great at lower ranks, but in higher ranks she's one of the best junglers in the game and probably always will be. She's all about early aggression, snowballing early ganks, invades, and just destroying the map before the 15-minute mark. You've got spears, you've got mobility, you've got crazy execute potential with your Cougar form Q, you've got pounce resets, you've got traps, you've got heals. There is so much that Nidalee offers, but you need to understand how to use all of those abilities together perfectly whilst also having constant tempo on the map and making sure you get that early lead. Nidalee really doesn't scale that well. All she's going to do in the very later stages of the game is spam a few spears and spam a few heals, because if you get close, you're probably going to get blown up. So when playing Nidalee, it's all about being ahead of the game, always being stronger than your enemies. And there's not many junglers in the game that can make use of a Magi Soul Stealer as well as Nidalee can. The reason Nidalee is the hardest jungler in the game to master is not just because of her complex kit. It's largely due to that playstyle that goes along with it. Snowballing and dominating games, shutting down the enemy jungler, and removing anyone's ability to play the game, because if they come close, they get a spear to the face or a Cougar biting their face off. That's going to wrap up our video all about the top hardest junglers to master in Season 13. We hope you enjoyed this video and agree with our choices, and let us know in the comments who you think is the most difficult jungler in the game to master. Feel free to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy our videos, and let us know what you want to see from us next. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, take care.